everyone, and a good day to you from whichever part of the world you're tuning in from. My name is Beatrice Omenyao, and I'm the Marketing and Communications Coordinator here at DOWA. Thank you so much for joining us on our first series, which replaces our monthly live webinars. However, it still promises to be educative, insightful, and informative. Today, we'll be discussing financial technology, or Fintech as we popularly know it. Fintech is a rapidly growing industry globally. Today, we'd like to look at the Fintech industry in Africa, and joining us are three seasoned experts whom we like to call emerging voices. They are pace setters in their own right. They'll be speaking to us about their Fintech journey so far, the challenges they faced, and the strategies they use to overcome these challenges. They would also touch on how the pandemic COVID-19 is affecting the Fintech industry in Africa and also the future of Fintech in Africa. My colleague Cynthia will be joining me on this ride by interviewing one of the speakers. If you're very eager to learn about Fintech in Africa as much as I want to, then stick and stay with us.
Patrick Awori is the founder and CEO of Imaginarium, which develops Circle, Africa's first digital group saving platform. He draws from a deep passion for democratizing finance to work with other global stakeholders in the financial community to create a more enabling environment for the development of Africa's burgeoning fintech sector. He's also chairman of the Citizens Association, a network of individuals and businesses spanning over 12 industrial sectors committed to supporting sustainable community development. In addition, Patrick has a keen interest in political economy, design thinking, and youth empowerment. Wahida Mohamed is the founder of the Islamic Fintech Hub of Sub-Saharan Africa that is looking to ethically and in a participatory manner disrupt the fintech industry. She has participated in various Islamic financial capability and inclusion studies undertaken in Kenya, Sudan, and Comoros by the Islamic Research Training Institute. She has an undergraduate statistics degree and a master's degree in monitoring and evaluation, as well as a postgraduate certificate in business administration.
Hello, Assalamu alaikum. My name is Wahida Mohamed. I'm speaking to you from Mombasa, Kenya, a port that sits right on the Indian Ocean on the east coast of Africa. I'm happy to answer a few of your questions. I am the founder of the Islamic Fintech Hub of Sub-Saharan Africa.
Kevin Currer is the founder and director of the Tory Dynamics Limited, a software company based in Kenya. He is also the CTO of the Enroll Limited, a business strategy company based in Africa. His companies have clients in Europe, USA, Asia, and Africa. He's involved in major projects in East Africa in fintech and insurance technology, and has worked with many of the major banks and insurance companies in Kenya and East Africa. He also has other business interests in trade and commodities.
I'm Kevin Korir. I am the founder of a software company called Tory Dynamics Limited, which is based in Kenya. We primarily are fintech within the tech space. We also do, the entire software engineering process from start to finish, from the coding to the QA to the market entry, and so on and so forth. I'm also the CTO of a company called Enroll Limited, which is a business consultancy company based here in Kenya as well. We have clients all over the world, from the US, many countries in Africa, Europe as well, and some in Asia. And yes, it's a pleasure to be here.
started my career in fintech right after university back in 2012, and I was fascinated back then about some of the exciting things M-Pesa was doing in the market and how it was changing the game so drastically. And a few of us set out to learn more about what was happening exactly in the business and how we could figure out what was happening next. And there was a rush of sorts. We started by developing Africa's first digital platform for saving groups, which has now evolved into the Circle wallet. Well, anyway, starting something new is easy. That's the easy part. But sticking to it and seeing it through to its natural end requires other skills besides just knowledge and intelligence. And I found that keeping an open mind and having perseverance has helped me survive and moderately excel in my career. Um, so yeah, I think perseverance and the willingness to learn will get you a long way.
I'm a statistics graduate, so I went into data science, and then I got this opportunity to study for a doctor of software engineering. But I have an interest in machine learning and a passion for Islamic finance, which I developed along the way. So my thesis is going to revolve around this arena. But as I am studying, I started to think about what I would want to do when my studies are over. I just didn't want it to be a degree and that was the end of it. I wanted to use it. And the best way I could think of doing so was to start the Islamic Fintech Hub of Sub-Saharan Africa that is currently working with 9 startups. Hopefully, we are going to onboard one more soon, which will make the first cohort that will be incubated for the next 3 years. I've been happy to say it was money, but it isn't. It's people. My mentors actually directed me through the journey that I'm taking now. They tutored me about Islamic finance. They took me through, went on to research with them in different aspects of Islamic finance. Then after that, they found for me the university and the scholarship to study the Doctor of Software Engineering. And now they are slowly letting me go, and since they have propelled me into the direction that now it's like rolling down the hill, everything is coming together. As I sit back, I put in all the steps that I've been learning along the way into this one journey that I'm on right now. So it is people who are the reason for my success. And when they say that your network is your net worth, this is very, very true. And it's important to start building this right from a very young age, because it's people who will take you to places that you can never imagine to go on your own.
Yes, so in my undergrad, I did information technology. We had a lot of software engineering in there. I've always been interested in tech. I began coding even before my university days. So since a young age, I was very interested in tech. But specifically how I entered into fintech is I worked for a company called Craft Silicon, which is one of the largest fintech companies in East Africa, and I would say also in Africa. It's a company that provides banking softwares to some of the major banks around here. And they have a core banking suite. They also have a mobile banking suite. So we worked on some of those products while I was there. So that was my entry into the fintech world, because I had a lot of dealings with banks such as Barclays, which is now ABSA. We dealt with Standard Chartered and such banks. So I really got interested in fintech from that time. So even when I started my company, one of the areas that we focused strongly on in the beginning is also within fintech.
I wouldn't really say that the pandemic is reinventing the use of financial solutions, but I would say it's accelerating an already shifting trend away from the traditional brick and mortar financial system in Africa towards digital. So you have the proliferation of mobile money over the last decade, which is evidence of this, and we're just scratching the surface. There's more going on in the future. What we're witnessing during the pandemic is a dramatic increase in the use of and demand for low touch financial solutions, both for safety reasons as well as convenience.
Well, we've had mobile money for quite some time, so this is not as a result of COVID. But it's interesting to see how we now use mobile money for no contact shopping. You can order from the supermarket and pay for your goods, have them delivered to your doorstep without contact, without touching any form of cash. It would be very exciting to see whether there can be an Islamic finance Sharia product that comes out of this. For instance, COVID has affected livelihoods, and many of us do not have enough money to pay for food right to the end of the month. There are times we have to borrow, so we borrow from friends or from the local shopkeeper. Can there be an Islamic finance product where I can borrow for food and pay at the end of the month? Islamic finance meaning it is a cost plus profit, not an interest-based profit. And then the other thing that I've seen mushrooming quite a bit are the digital banks. We have this in South Africa, in Nigeria, and in Uganda. Perhaps they are not as a direct result of COVID, but they in many ways speak to what COVID has made us become. So these digital banks, there isn't one that I can see that is Sharia compliant so far. So I'm just wondering when and where the next one will come from.
Main challenge in the fintech domain in Africa, I would say, is insufficient domestic innovation capital, which comes both in human and monetary form. Most of the innovation capital currently comes from overseas, which means equity and shareholding is disproportionately held by foreigners, while the locals are mostly net consumers of these digital financial services. So you have um, a lot of foreigners owning the IP rights to the digital financial services or solutions that are consumed by Africans. That's resulting in an unsustainable ecosystem or an ecosystem that's developing unsustainably. So you have to encourage more participation by local talent and local investors so that we can evolve into net producers of these digital financial solutions and not just net consumers. So you have a sort of an imbalance in the industry, and this comes all the way from the structure of the investment in the industry and also the representation of the talent in the industry locally. So that's in my opinion the main challenge faced by our fintech domain locally.
From an Islamic fintech perspective, our greatest challenge is fundraising. We need halal funds. Halal in the sense that they come from sources that are acceptable in Islam. They shouldn't be revenue from gambling or from alcohol or tobacco. They shouldn't have run through the interest-based system. So where do we get these types of funding in Sub-Saharan Africa? It's difficult. We have to source from outside. But when you reach there, you find that there are homegrown fintech that are also fighting for the same funding that you are looking for. It is only when you can produce a very, very competitive idea backed with sound financial numbers behind it that you can present this to an investor to even get interest from them before they decide whether they are going to speak to you or not. So usually it takes longer for Islamic fintech from Sub-Saharan Africa to raise funding. And then there are also language problems because we are sourcing from countries maybe where English is not their first language, and where their language, for instance, if it is Arabic, is not our first language. So that is also another hurdle that we face. Another hurdle that I see is getting girls who are involved in Islamic fintech as startup founders to incubate. They are very few and far between. So these are the three challenges that I see facing the fintech domain that are unique to Africa, Sub-Saharan Africa. I think if the Islamic Fintech Hub is to do what it's supposed to do, and then it can become a pipeline for funding from outside Sub-Saharan Africa into startups that are based into Sub-Saharan, like a pipeline sort of. But we have to be tried and tested, and we have to prove that our intentions are good and what we are doing is exactly what we said we would do. And until that time, we just have to keep sourcing for funding from mature markets for Islamic finance. About the girls, well, the hub itself has a policy of ensuring that at least 1/3 of the startup founders must be girls, and then at least one of the startups that is being incubated has to target women financing. So in this way, we will generate interest not only from the girls who will be interested in fintech, but also their mothers who will be using the products that are produced from the startups that are incubated by the Islamic Fintech Hub. About language problems, that of course we just need to learn the languages of the countries where we expect to be participating in. And wouldn't it be nice if you could go to, say, China and speak in Chinese so that you can get your funding instead of trying to explain to them in English? So that will be one of the capacity building services that the hub will offer.
So the first thing we consider when building a solution is what is the problem we're solving? Because a solution is a solution to a problem. So if it's a problem, which markets experience this kind of problem? What are the different sub niches that you could go into? For example, within fintech, there's fintech for mobile banking, and fintech in blockchain and such technologies, fintech in the e-commerce space. So once you identify the problem and you come up with a solution for it, there are other factors to consider as well. Number one, in choosing the kind of market that you're going to set up in, I would say cultural factors come into play. Are people willing to adopt that technology? A good example in this is if you're in a lending platform, and according to Sharia law, for example, the way they handle interest is very different from the way other cultures handle interest. So that's one thing to consider, that's culture. The other thing to consider is the economic stability of the market you're looking at. So for example, while we're scaling up, like as my company, we would choose maybe Ghana over Somalia, for example, to expand. Although Ghana is on the other side of the continent, the economic stability provided by the government there is such that as a new company, you can set up, you can expand, you can market your product without having much of a challenge as compared to economically unstable regions. And the economics, one major factor there to consider is also the kind of currency that is used. So for example, if a country's currency collapses, one of the heaviest hit industries is the fintech industry. Banking, for example, you find some banks collapsing, and that is not an environment that is good for an innovative company to thrive in. One major challenge that we have here in Africa is the issue of corruption. Corruption is all over the world, but particularly here, it can really hinder you in terms of progressing, because at some point you might have to come back and meet somebody who will ask you for a bribe. So if you want to expand, some people pay it, but I would say that in the end, it hurts all of us. And it's a matter of principle, whether you want to partake in the system or you want to go against it. Some people are rewarded for going against it, and some people are rewarded by playing in the system. So I would say it's a matter of personal principle as well. And if your company decides to go the other way of going, not through corruption, basically, you would really have to stand out and beat the competition, because it's quite a serious challenge here, but we are trying to overcome it. In particular countries in Africa, it's a bit worse than others. I would say some countries are not very known for it, and some countries are known for it. So it really depends on the kinds of products that you're bringing into which country. So one thing we do as a company is we are really vocal about going against such vices, because it is an infinite cycle. So we need to come up with solutions, even within the fintech space, to go against this. For example, sometime back we were working on an AI fraud detection system. So that counteracts these kinds of challenges using the very same technology within fintech. And there have been great strides in the Kenyan market specifically to combat such challenges such as corruption, especially in the private sector. Many young companies such as ourselves are trying to change the narrative. And I would say in the past few years, we've made quite a bit of progress. And I'd be happy to say that Kenya is a very investable country, if that's a word. And it's quite welcoming to outside investment. And in comparison to other countries in the world, I would say Kenya is one of the best countries to expand to within fintech.
Yeah, Kenya is a great market. It's one of the global hub for technology. I'm glad that there are people like you who are actually in the space doing that. I'm curious about the AI fraud detector. How is the process of that particular idea? Is it still in progress, or is it completely done? Could you tell us more about it?
So it's more of a project that seeks to solve problems within different sectors. So it's not, I would say it's a general tool that we would implement in our own softwares. So for example, one of the applications we are currently doing here in Kenya is a lending platform where for members on the platform, we would avail their university fees upfront for the whole year. And then they would pay on a month-on-month basis according to your capabilities. So instead of, for example, having to come up with $3,000 at once, you could come up with 10, 20, 100 maybe over time. And in the end, you could clear your debt and take however long you need to pay. There is such a solution offered by the government, which is called HELP. But HELP has a lot of challenges, specifically in terms of the amounts that are being given. You'd find that most of the private institutions in Kenya are quite expensive when it comes to university education. The government solution only caters for public universities or students who are chosen by the government to be in it. And it has a lot of downsides to it. So this is a modern outlook on such a product, and it enables even families who are not so well off to be able to enter and be part of these prestigious private institutions.
Scaling beyond Africa is definitely something that's generally in the African fintech founders' horizon. We are both confident in our abilities and in the quality of our solutions, and the fact that in our generation, African innovators see ourselves not just as pawns but as partners in providing solutions to the global challenges of the day. So we've been developing our solutions with global scalability in mind. That's for sure.
In my view, we should always think about going beyond Africa. Why not? I mean, think about many years ago when there was, say, the Indian Ocean trade. It was beyond Africa. So why is it that now we are developing solutions only for Africa? For us at the hub, whenever we develop a solution, some of the key issues we tackle is how would we tap into the international market in the next 5 to 10 years, say. So if it is an e-commerce platform for farm produce, then we think about how do we get halal certification not only locally but also internationally, because when our farmers want to sell their produce into the international markets, we want them to be able to do it seamlessly without meeting any hurdles. And so we tackle the halal certification process right from the start right now. When we talk about halal certification, it's not a religious or worship thing. It's about making sure that the food is can be consumed by human beings. It's good for human consumption, that the animals are slaughtered in a proper way, food is handled in a safety manner, the chemicals that are used are okay for us to use in planting, so, or in the storage of food. That is what halal certification. Which brings me to another challenge that I forgot to talk about. There are certain terms that when people talk about Islamic finance, we tend to immediately think that they are related to religion or worship as described in Islam. But normally they are not, and this is a hurdle that as players within this industry, we need to educate the stakeholders that really these are basic standards that can be accepted even by non-Muslims and used by non-Muslims. So besides halal certification, we also think about fatwas. Fatwas are rulings based on the Islamic law, where a scholar will come and tell you your product is according to the Islamic law or it isn't. So we can have a locally based scholar do that for you, or a committee of scholars do that for you. But then you can also have international scholars do that for you, so that in every market that you're targeting, somebody has a reference point of an international scholar who has certified that your product is Sharia compliant.
So the potential for scaling is quite big. Many companies here scale quite rapidly. A hindrance to scaling, I would say, in comparison to the US, is that capital does not come as easily as it does there. And aside from that, generally the African population is very quick in adopting new technologies, and that has been shown greatly in their mobile banking and mobile money space. The adoption rate here is quite something, and I would say that that spirit of wanting to take up new technologies, make your own life better using technology, that is ingrained in the African culture, I would say.
Immediately I think about drought and how annually we hear these stories about pastoralists who die, their livestock die, they lose livelihoods, and sometimes have to change their traditional way of living because of the drought. How nice would it be if there was a fintech solution, say Islamic social finance solution that is coupled with fintech to address the drought, to provide resilience to the pastoralists by giving them an alternative means of livelihood. For instance, think about Zaka. Can we couple it with tech on mobile, collect the funds, um, develop hydroponics projects for people who've been affected by drought? Will this solve our problem or will it not? The question though is why hasn't it been done, and who is daring enough amongst us to try and do it and see where it will take these communities that are afflicted by drought year in, year out.
For anyone looking at the African market in general as a market they want to go into, it is important to consider all the things we had mentioned at the beginning, the cultural factor, the socioeconomic factor, and even things as simple as the population of a country. Those can make a big difference, because if you look at countries with the larger tech companies tend to be countries with larger populations as well. The US has most of the major tech companies, China as well. I don't think that's a coincidence. I think that's a mix of both the environmental factors and the infrastructure already being there, as well as the population. And if you're in Africa, for example, you would need to scale to other countries in order to match up the number of users or customers that an equivalent company in a larger country will have.
Years ago, I wouldn't do anything differently. I think everything I've experienced is part of the journey, and I have no regrets so far. In 10 years from now, fintech will be a part and parcel of everyday life. It won't just be a buzzword in pop culture or a niche topic or subject debated by academics. Technology will be an everyday word. It'll be part of our lives in different facets. And the conversation about financial technology or just technology in general will shift towards ethics, the impact, the ethics, and sustainability. And that's how I see this playing out in the next decade.
I would say that the thing I would do differently is encourage some of my peers to take the leap in terms of looking at new technologies. Many of us were psyched about things like blockchain when it came out, when it became popular. But some of my colleagues did not really look much into it, considering it was new at that time, and the technology wasn't as widespread. So I would say in tech, taking the risk pays off sometimes, and payoff in tech most of the time is a larger payoff than in other industries, considering the scalability allowed by the system. And the other thing I would say that could have been different is gentler government policies, especially in terms of taxation. But on that front, the government is doing quite a bit to the government of Kenya, that is, to reduce the amount of taxes being paid by startups through some initiatives. Although I would say for the majority of the companies in existence right now, tax is a major hurdle that they need to go beyond and to be very careful about. So the fintech space in Africa is a bit unique, I would say, in the world, considering the opportunities for growth that there are. Generally in fintech, things move fast, but for markets that are largely untapped, such as the ones here in Africa, even an advanced country in Africa like Kenya, there's still so much room for growth, which presents in and of itself a lot of opportunities for companies to innovate and to grow. So even a company that you think is already large, there's still a lot more growth that could happen.
Wow, those were insightful nuggets our speakers shared with us today. It's heartwarming to know that the fintech industry in Africa is growing despite the challenges it faces. I hope you learned a thing or two. We are also very grateful to our speakers for finding time and talking to us about their fintech journey. Don't forget to follow us on our social media pages or platforms are popping up the screen right now. Until we come your way again, remember to stay safe and follow all COVID-19 protocols. It's bye from here.